Hello, it's me, Kyle. Welcome to Give Pause Hobby, a channel where I stop to appreciate the things I love to fill my free time with. So this week, we're bringing something slightly different to you. And also the setup is a little bit different because this is IRL, no green screen magic going on. And that's because on iMovie, all I know how to do is add one thing to a background. And so if I'm adding myself, I can't add magic cards. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about this frame behind me, which I know has a rough glare on it. So I'm showing it to you right now on the screen. This is something that I worked a decent amount on. I think it was like 7 hours total. Like tracking down, figuring out which cards I wanted to put in, tracking them down, organizing them, and then the bulk of it is planning and actually carrying out the framing for it, mounting them on the paper, blah, blah, blah. So what this is kind of my homage to my first Magic set, Ravnica, City of Guilds, and then the following to, or I guess the Ravnica block, and then the set, Ravnica, Guild Pact, and Dissension. So this was, what this is 5 cards for each of the 10 guilds. So before I get into exactly what this is, some backstory. So I centered it so I'm not like awkwardly off to the side, because I will be using that space later, but not now. Ravnica, as I said, was my first block, my first set of Magic cards with a mom who 100% bought into the satanic panic of the early days Magic cards. My first time, I played a bit growing up with my cousins, but the first time I owned my own Magic cards was in college. And I had no intention of like, when I go to college, I'm gonna play Magic. But during freshman year, a roommate of mine, or on the same floor of my dorm, who was way into Magic, and I was like, meh, I like video games. I like Halo a lot. He was showing me this trailer they had for Ravnica, and he started explaining how, there's these 5 colors. I was like, yeah, I kind of know that. He's like, well, in Ravnica, there are 10 guilds for each of the 2 pairings of colors, and it takes the theme and the mechanics usually associated with those colors and melds them together into 10 different distinct flavors. And apparently I was a Vorthos before they had a name for that, because I thought that was a really cool idea. I immediately was intrigued and continued to do kind of some research and looking into it, and before long decided I was going to try it out. By the time the set came out, we had already ordered the starter, like basic guild starter decks for me and 3 of my roommates. This is sophomore year. I was living in a house with 6 guys, and 5 of us wound up playing Magic, whether new, like me and my friend, or lapsed players, like 2 of the other guys, or 3 of the other guys, and then the 6th one would just vape and get high and chuckle at us for being geeks. And so we played, it was that like perfect melding of the amount of free time, just enough like fun money, probably honestly not enough for what we spent, but like just enough to get there. And we just like went deep into Magic and had a blast. And throughout the block, the Ravnica block, we, each time the new set would come out, we would kind of talk about the different ones coming out, what their style, what their theme was, and figure out who was going to be that guild. So this was before any of us had like a significant collection to speak of. A couple of the lapsed players had like decks from before. One of them had just like a series of absolutely broken mono decks, which were, tournament style, not like kitchen table casual style. So we turned the game on its head. We was like, that's not what we're doing here. We're kind of getting the starter decks, maybe adding cards that we have, but we, at that point, our collections were very, very slow to grow. And by the end of Dissension, we we were kind of moving on from that starter deck phase of Magic, where we were like, well, these are so janky. Like, there's things in here that just don't work. And at that point, our collections were growing, and from there, at least 3 of us continued playing for quite some time. I played for the remaining 4 years that I was in undergrad. I made this frame I'm showing you right now. This is also on my walls at the school where I teach. And this was my first frame, like Magic framed thing that I made that was honoring the years that I was active playing Magic. And I have the 5 basic lands from Ravnica because the Ravnica lands are the best lands. And then I have 1 non-basic land from each of the expert sets that I was, around for. So I have Ghost Quarter from Ravnica, Dark Depths from Cold Snap, Vesuva from, that's not what it's called. I think it's called that, from Time Spiral, Mutavault from Lorwyn, and then Reliquary Tower from Shards of Alara. So these aren't necessarily strong, really good lands. Mutavault was. That one actually cost money for me to buy. But the rest of these I never actually really played with. I just wanted something that was indicative, that was kind of cool looking, of the sets that I was a part of. And then I have some Elvish in the middle there. Not all those who wander are lost. So I did that, and I kind of let it go and moved on. In 2009, I kind of put Magic down. Then later on, just a ways down the road, when I was no longer playing Magic, I saw this emotional web, or web of emotions that I'm showing you right now, and I thought it was really funny. It has around the outside the stressed, horny, angry, sad, and hungry, and then the combinations of those are new words. Like if you're hungry and angry, you're hangry. We all know that one. But if you're hungry and horny, you're hurngry. And or stressed and horny, you're strawny. So I just thought that was kind of funny. And part of my brain was like, hang on a sec, I have seen something like this before. And lo and behold, what I was thinking of was that exact graphic, but with the guilds of Ravnica. And I was like, hang on, would this work if I put them there? And I was like, okay, so let's go through and let's see. So the easy ones, well, I guess the easiest one was angry. I was like, okay, so which color is angry? Red. Duh. Which color is sad? And I was like, that could be blue or black, but probably black, because what really fit blue better was hungry. And then that left stressed and horny, which I was like, well, stressed is much more of a white thing. And then horny, make many. It kind of makes sense for the color that makes, lots of mana and or lots of little creatures. Well, I guess white does little creatures too, but I'm talking saproling type little. So anyways, I did that, and turns out it works really well. So you have horny, stressed Selesnya. Okay, what about horny and hungry Simic? Okay, horny and sad Golgari, horny and angry Gruul. But stressed and sad Orzhov, angry, hungry Izzet, angry, sad Rakdos. That one probably matches the least, because I don't think there's any part of sadness in Rakdos. But anyways, so this was just part of my DNA, gamer DNA, was this love of the guilds, love of the theme, the setting of Ravnica, and it was just something that I carried with me this whole time. Now, funnily enough, there have been multiple returns to Ravnica, which I have been 100% oblivious to. I'm sure I probably saw I don't even know their names of the different sets. And but I'm sure I saw at some point that there are announcements or pictures or whatever, and I was so far, cut cold turkey with Magic. I was like, I'm going to a different school. I don't want to rebuild a new Magic play group. I'm going to focus on other things, and never went back to it until now. And this is for another video. I'm already kind of going long on just my intro, so I'm going to save Project Jumpstart for another time. But that is my new outlet, my Magic outlet, because I've chased down the feeling of like piloting a deck without necessarily having the either time or money commitment of actually building a deck. I've chased that down in many board games to mostly disappointing results. And I'm really excited to be back. And I think, and I hope, Project Jumpstart is a way for me to still experience what Magic has to offer without a huge price tag, but also in more of a board gamey like silhouette. That's not just like this all-consuming building your deck thing, because I'm not into that right now, and I don't know anyone of my gamer friends who want to be, tinkering with decks between game time. Like, we just want to sit down, put something in front of us, and play. And that's not typically what Magic is, but that's what Jumpstart can be. So anyways, that's another video for another time. Let's actually get to talking about this. So what this is for every one of the guilds, there are 5 cards. At the top, we have their what do you call it? Their signet. Underneath that, we have a card that has their guild mechanic, because each of the guilds had like one unique mechanic assigned to just their cards. Then in the middle is their guild mage. The 4th one down is a card that has a special meaning to me, or just a cool card overall that's kind of like from that guild. And then the last one at the bottom is their land. Now, not their pain land, because A, I wanted to be able to actually have the cards here, and I don't want to pay that much money. But B, I like the art for the pain lands is beautiful, but it's a little bit kind of like nebulous, and these are a little bit more descriptive. They look like the guilds, like an actual place, not just like a mood board type style. I think I like the art better on the pain lands, but these ones I had, and showed the place. So I'm moving off to the side to get ready. But what I'm going to do, the structure of this episode is going to be showing each of the cards, and for the signets, I'm going to be rating how I like the artwork. Is to like first to last favorite. For the mechanic card, I'm going to be giving a grade as to how much of an impact that mechanic had on our game group. For the guild mage, I'm going to be grading the artwork, again, first to last. And then I'll give just like a brief reason why I have the cool card in there, what it means to me. The lands, I'm just gonna like call a parent / teacher of, I can't love any of them more than I actually really like every single one of these for its own. I think it does a good job of representing the guilds with the name and the picture and just how it looks. So they're all equal. I'm just gonna call them out and then move on to the next guild. But before that, I will give my personal rule of cool rating, like my grade rating of each of these guilds. I didn't want to do like a first to last because there are ties in there. And none of this is a strength, like actual power of these cards assessment, because A, I've been out of actual like type 2 Magic since 2009. And B, that's not what this is about. This is about just like loving the game for what it is, for what it means to us. And that last part I'm showing you now again, I teach middle schoolers, and so it is not lost on me that the youngest of them, when they're about 11, when they come into middle school, 11, 12, they were just being born when I was done with Magic, which means this set was at least 3-4 years before they were even around. Which is just wild. And that's why I want to put the dates up there to make me seem even older to them. So when things I say, I don't know the lingo of the time, and be like, I was playing original Ravnica. What can I say? In college, no less. So anyways, let's get to it. So I have them in order, kind of so that there is the color gradation by guild. And I had to start with Dimir. So Dimir, reason being, this was my first guild of Ravnica, which is really kind of funny looking back on it, being that this guild was, at least one way you could play them, and the way I did play them was a milling deck. And my very first deck in Magic was a milling deck, and I had no idea what was going on in the game broadly, so I was naturally playing the guild that's going for the alternate win condition. What could go wrong? But Dimir Signet, an emblem of a secret guild. The Dimir insignia is seen only by its own members and the doomed. I love this thing. I think it looks cool and ominous. I rated this first out of 10. So calling it right there, just getting right into the thick of things. Moving down, Drift of Phantasms was the card I used for Transmute. And so Transmute, I rated as a C in terms of its impact on the group. I thought it was really cool when I first got it, and when I got one copy of one of the cards we're going to see soon, there was a Dimir Infiltrator I was able to transmute for that card, where you're able to pay it, discard this card, and then get something out of your deck with the same convert mana cost. And it's really great, like a limited tutor effect, but it's also kind of slow. So didn't really have, again, this is not a rating of like overall strength. This is a rating of how we played it back then, how much of an impact it had on our game group. And I said C. Dimir Guildmage, for the blue and the black, draw a card or make someone discard a card at sorcery effect. Pretty cool, kind of expensive, but it's there, it's on the table, it's something for you to do with it. And I said that this was my third favorite of the Guildmage artworks. I'm not sure what exactly he's doing there. He's like grabbing magic like fog from his chest, like a magic Iron Man. But I like it. Glimpse the Unthinkable. Here is the card. The reason this is up there is because this is the first card when I was in playing Magic that I was like, I want a copy of this thing. It's so sick. Just mill 10 cards, just a sixth of their deck gone. I'm confident that if anyone actually penetrates our facades, even the most perceptive would still be fundamentally unprepared for the truth of House Dimir. So this is the card that I eventually got one copy. I pulled from something I didn't buy because it was, when I found out you could buy individual cards, this was worth money that I was not prepared to spend on individual cards. So of course, suddenly Transmute came back into the game because I wanted whatever I could do to get through my deck so I could get this effect, off. But it's, I think, just a super awesome, like the artwork, the name, the flavor text, the effect, the whole package is just awesome. And Dimir Aqueduct is honestly probably one of my least favorite of these lands. I know they said they're all tied, but it's there. They're in the sewers. Like the watery part of the sewers, not like the garbage part of the sewers. That's more like Golgari's zone. So moving on, we have Rakdos. So Rakdos was also my guild. When Dissension came out, we were looking at what guilds were available, and of those of us who are still in the game of like choosing one of these guilds, buying the deck, and then trying it out. Some of them had kind of fallen off at that point, but this was mine. And hang on, sorry, Dimir. S tier. And honestly, in terms of like impact, like rule of cool, how I think of the guild, S tier. It was my intro to the game. It threw a lot of stuff at me, like a lot of problems I needed to figure out. That starter deck was garbage, and yeah, so I just look fondly on that guild, even if they weren't like the strongest thing in the world. I love House Dimir so very much. The flavor of it, being the contrarian, going for a milling win, it's just delightful. So back to Rakdos. This was also my deck, one of my guilds, and yeah. So right off the bat, I am met with the Rakdos Signet, which I rated 9th of 10. I hate this artwork. I do not like it at all. The flavor text is okay. Made with bone and boiled in blood. A Rakdos Signet is not considered finished until it has been used as a murder weapon. I mean, that's pretty like metal, but I just do not care for that art at all. It like sticks out so wildly because all the other signets look like a thing that's in the world, and I don't understand what I'm looking at. This looks like an illusion you would see as like lava is like churning over in a lake of like underground. It is. I do not care for it. So let's move on. Demon Fire features Hellbent, which is the Rakdos mechanic, which I rated as S. This was, by the time it came out, we had been in, Magic long enough that we knew card advantage was a thing. If you could draw cards, that was a good thing. You should try to do that thing. And what's more, you wanted to have options. You wanted to have outs, cards in your hand that were going to be for next turn, or you could use as rebuttals for what your other players were doing. And Hellbent just flew in the face of that. And if you have no cards in hand, when you play the card, something extra happened. So this burn spell became uncounterable, and its damage can't be prevented. Like, just sick. Like, that's exactly what you want for your burn spells. But the way you get that is by playing like a madman. And I think it was just super fun, chasing down that, like, the dragon of having a 0 card hand, and then just like living in the now of like what you draw is what you play, or at least what you have to play before you play your next Hellbent thing. I had a ton of fun with that mechanic. Rakdos Guildmage, give a creature -2/-2, or make a 2/1 hasty goblin. Pretty cool. Both of those abilities are good and useful, and I think they're all a little bit overcosted, and all the guild mages, but they're there as soon as you put down a 2-mana body. So like, what are you complaining about? In terms of the artwork, this is my 7th of 10. I don't care for it all that much. The overall vibe is just not my favorite. So there it is. Wrecking Ball is my other card, and I ran this in my Rakdos deck. I think it's a fun play on the name and the flavor text, like Wrecking Ball as in like ka-zhoosh. Then Rakdos festivals almost leave enough rubble in their wake to hide the bodies. So they're not talking about a wrecking ball, they're talking about like a party that wrecks wherever it is. Destroy target creature or land. Again, little expensive, but just versatile enough and has some fun flavor. And then Rakdos Carnarium. This one always like threw me. It's just, the more you look at it, the more like bodies you realize are hanging down from the ceiling. You're like, whoa. The first thing I think of is a guillotine, which there isn't one in here. It just kind of looks like it at a glance, but pretty cool land, if rather dark. Next up, Boros. Boros was my friend's, one of the starter Ravnica guilds, that he worked to make work for a while and never really got there. But, I forgot again. Okay, Rakdos. My rule of cool overall rating, A. And I think Hellbent was, it came at the perfect time, as I was just getting like, oh, this is a thing you want to do when you're playing Magic. And, like have cards, like have a big grip, but it just kind of like flipped that on its head and was really an interesting puzzle for me to play with. So, A. Boros, my friend played it. Eventually, I had a deck that was Boros inspired. We'll get to that later. But Boros Signet, I mean, this one is rad. Like, I know I just said it's like the other ones are like things in the world, and I think this one it's just like fire around it. Have you ever held a Boros Signet? There's a weight to it that belies its size, a weight of strength and of pride. And says the hard-boiled detective, Agrascos. Yeah, I like this one. I've said this was my second favorite of all the signets, so just below Dimir. Rally the Righteous is a card for the guild mechanic, which was Radiance, where creatures that shared a color got to do something cool. So untap target creature and each other creature that shares a color with it, those creatures get +2/+0 for the end of turn. I mean, undeniably helpful, has its utility. I said D, at least for what my friend was doing with his Boros deck. It never really got to the level, like the Radiance mechanic just never really meshed with anything, and so the deck was never very good. But when I made my Boros deck, it didn't use that at all. So again, not a rating of overall strength, just a rating of how we perceived it. Boros Guildmage, giving haste and first strike on the turn, perfectly fine abilities, like great things to use, awesome utility. I do not like this art. I said this was my 10th. This was my least favorite of the other. And it's the only one that's like really heavily kind of like line art. It's like the border lines are like super heavy and dark. But yeah, I just do not like this artwork, and I don't honestly know why, but you know, the heart wants what it wants, and it doesn't want what it doesn't want. Boros Swiftblade is the cool card here. My red-white deck, which I guess technically was Boros because it used Boros cards, I entitled Swift Guide Wins, because if you could play Boros Swiftblade, a 1/2 double striker on turn 2, and then you could enchant it with Griffin Guide on turn 3, which gave it +2/+2 and flying, then you had a 3/2 flying, no, sorry, a 3/4 flying double striker on turn 3 that was attacking on turn 3. It was just gross. It was like a bust, not like busted, but like for casual, I really started playing that in MTGO when I played that for a while. And for a casual Magic Online deck, turn 3 flying double strikers, sending 6 damage at them, yeah, that was a thing. I eventually did make that deck in real life, and it's also fun. Boros Garrison is a sick. That's just a really cool. I like the colors of it. I like the look of it. Yeah, good stuff. Not forgetting Boros overall A. The Swift Guide Wins deck was super fun to play, even when it didn't get that like busted combo. But yeah, I enjoyed Boros, even though its initial outing did not go well for my friend. Orzhov, white black. The form of the sigil is just as important as the sigil itself. If it's carried on a medallion, its bearer is a master. If it's tattooed on the body, its bearer is a slave. So Orzhov was not technically my guild, but I really liked. I wanted it to be mine, but my guild in Guild Pack comes later. But I do really like it, and I said Orzhov. However, the signet, I rated this 7th. I like the Boros like logo, their symbol a lot, but the signet I don't like that much. Blind Hunter with Haunt. So Haunt, whenever this card is put into graveyard from play, remove the game. And so sorry, I had to take a pause and actually read over what Haunt did. And I knew it, but just the wording of the italics was a little bit weird to me. So when it comes into play, and then when the creature it haunts goes to the graveyard, so like when this dies, it haunts someone else. I really liked this mechanic. I used it to pretty good effect when I did eventually make a bleeder deck out of Orzhov. So I said this was a B. It wasn't like the most powerful thing, but it was fun. Orzhov Guildmage. Target player gains a life. Each player loses a life. This is like the picture. This was my number one. Of all guild mages, this one rules the most. I think it's awesome. The abilities are actually pretty good too. Souls of the Faultless. This is my card, just like flavor card. More horrible than their empty forms are their noble eyes. I dare not strike. This is what I loved about Orzhov, were the cards that just like made things difficult. They slowed the game down. Pillory of the Sleepless was another one that was almost in this slot, but I just liked this, the vibe of like this flavor text and everything a little bit better than that. So yeah, I just really like this card. And again, in my bleeder deck, it helps slow the game down quite a bit. It's exactly what you want to have happen. Orzhov Basilica, I just love the fact that this is like the guild of money, or the guild of like organized crime, depending on what part you're looking at. And yeah, that's a really cool look to it as well. I rated them A, mainly because Orzhov did a pretty good job of being, we eventually really got into multiplayer magic, so the different 3-player variants, Piranha, Anti-Piranha, but also we actually never really got into Two-Headed Giant. That came to exist when I was playing, but we were more, if we could get 5, playing Star was like the best, where you had to kill your 2 opposite players, and the 2 on your side were your allies, which meant that you shared an ally with each of your allies, but you had an enemy that was one of their allies. It's like the most political, most fun. And Orzhov did a pretty good job of like holding its own in that like area, that arena. There it is. So yeah, A overall for Orzhov. Golgari is up next. Golgari was my friends, another one of their decks when they first came out. All the undead, buggy sort of things. Depending on your point of view, the seal represents a proud guardian of the natural cycle, or one who has sold her soul to darkness for eternal life. I rated this one, what did I rate this one? A 3. This was, yeah, again, it makes me think it's really there in the real world. It's a signet after all. It's maybe like the bug face is a little bit on the nose, but you know, overall, I dig it. Grave Shell Scarab was the card I chose with Dredge, which was the Golgari mechanic, where you get to pull this out of your graveyard by sending other things to it, right? Yes. Just checking. So funny, well, I rated this one a C, because we never really saw Dredge to its full extent, or its full potential in our games. But the irony is, I think this is the one mechanic that actually made it out of Ravnica that's like a thing in actual tournament play still. But yeah, to us and to our little insular group, Dredge really never took off all that much. Golgari Guildmage, sack a creature to return a creature to your hand from your graveyard, or put a +1/+1 counter for way expensive. Is what it is. But I said the Guildmage was a 5. It was my 5th place. I think it's kind of creepy, holding skulls and looking like a witch doctor sort of thing. So overall, pretty good. It's in the upper half, so can't complain too much. Dark Heart of the Wood. Now this wasn't like an absolute like busted like amazing card, but I just remember this one being one of those cards like, ooh, that's a cool effect, that can, like, if you just need a little help to get over the finish line, to that staying power. I thought it was like really helpful in those early games. We never use it past the early games. I don't think it's really all that helpful, but it was one of those learning cards, so it's in here. Golgari Rot Farm is gross. Again, this is like the sewers, as opposed to the Dimir, which is just like the water sewers. But again, does a good job of showing the guild and the environment that it's a part of. Overall, I said Golgari was a C. I did remember liking them, but probably the least of the 4 originals. And just like never, that one did not like have longevity in terms of someone pulled out their Golgari deck. Like, it just didn't see all that much play in our group. Again, just saying. All right, so Simic. Speaking of halves, we're on the bottom half, or the rightmost half of the guilds. So for the Simic Combine, its sigil serves as an emblem of honor built as a trademark. Its familiar image on any biological commodity attests to superb craftsmanship, ingenious innovation, and higher cost. And also 10th of 10 signets. This one sucks. I think the logo is okay. It's a bar of soap. I do not understand how this was given the green light. And this is coming from, like, I'm not saying that Greg Hildebrand's art is bad in general. I just don't know, compared to the other signets, how they're like, good to go. Yeah, I despise that signet. Vigian Hydropon. So it has graft, which was the whole, whenever a creature comes into play, you can choose to move a +1/+1 counter onto it, and then there was like something where if creatures had counters, they gained flying or they gained whatever. So there's a way of kind of like semi-sliver abilities, sort of, but also with like shifting power. And this is on here because I just think it's really cool. It can't attack or block. It's just like for 3, you get a 5/5 that's just there to be like pulled from to make other creatures bigger. I just think that's a really cool concept. And so, the overall, I rated that as a C. We never really got too much of the graft, like never really took off in any of our decks, though it was neat to think about. Simic Guildmage, so move a +1/+1 counter, they're really about that, and then attach an aura to someone else, so move auras, for pretty cheap, for, especially if a creature's about to die. That's a good thing you want to be able to do. Overall, I said Simic Guildmage. I rated this 6th of 10. I don't entirely know what's going on in the picture. The arms and the body look really cool. It's just like laser to fingers to other hands. It's just kind of nebulous, as Michael Scott would call it. Coiling Oracle. Honestly, I don't really remember too much about why this was. When it comes into play, reveal top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it into play. Otherwise, put it back, or otherwise put that card in your hand. I mean, it's pretty solid. It's a 1/1 for 2. I just remember my friend trying his best with this in his Simic deck, and it being kind of a cool effect. So it's in here as a little memory. Simic Growth Chamber is kind of like a weird indoor pool. Probably, again, they're all tied, but this is probably on the lower end of how much I like the lands, if I'm being honest. Overall, I rated Simic as a D. Really cool to think about. I think it's a good place for it to be in the 3rd of 3 sets, because it's more, kind of high-minded in terms of how it works and what you want to do with it, but it just never really took off with us. However, Izzet was my guild in Guild Pact. So again, Orzhov really called to me, but the madness, kind of manicness of Izzet called to me more, and so that was mine. And I love it, and I'll talk more about it in a second. Izzet Signet is redesigned often, each time becoming closer to a vanity portrait of Niv-Mizzet. I don't like this one very much. I put it as an 8. It's just kind of weird. The other ones are the whole idea of a signet is something you can put on your call, or just a thing you can put, and this is clearly the top of a cane. It's that's not what a signet is. I'm sorry, it's just not. I do like the flavor text, but yeah, 8 of 10 artwork wise. Train of Thought is the card with the mechanic Replicate, which copies a target instant or sorcery and choose new targets. This was used to pretty good effect, coming up here soon. I labeled this as an A because I got to use it a whole bunch, which dovetails right into the Guildmage, because you can copy instant of mana cost 2 or less, or a sorcery mana cost 2 or less for either blue or red mana, which is super helpful. Again, we'll get to that in a second. But I rate actually this Guildmage as my 2nd favorite artwork. I think it really encapsulates kind of the look of the wild mage, just going after things of the Izzet guild. But then my fun flavor card is Electrode, because this card was one of the hallmarks of like, I figured something out, and I was like, what if I had a deck that was mainly all instants and sorceries, ensnaring bridge, so when my hand size runs out, you can't attack me because you can only attack with power equal or less than cards in my hand, and then Gelectrode, every time I play one of those instants, which I can also copy in different ways, is going to untap, so I'm just sending pings all over the place. I love Gelectrode so much. Diametrically opposing energies and self-sealed plasmodermic bubbles make great pets. Fun flavor text too. Izzet Boiler Works? Cool. Definitely cool. I like the look of it. Overall, Izzet S tier. I love that deck. This is one of the decks that I still have to this day, and one of the more successful of them in our group. In the broader sense of the world, maybe not so much. Actually, it's done well, like, against other people too, but I love Izzet so much. Gruul, under the last 3. Gruul territorial markings need not be legible. The blood, snot, and muck used to smear them are unmistakably Gruul. So this one is I labeled this my 5th favorite signet. And this does fly in the face of what I hurled at the Izzet one, because this is also clearly not like a brooch or something he would put on, but it's like a marking put on a wall, which is very true to the theme of Gruul. They're just like, F this city. I'm just gonna put a marking on it and call it mine. So 5th of 10. Scab Clan Mauler was the card with the mechanic Bloodthirst. So if an opponent is dealt damage, they get that many +1/+1 counters on it. So it's a 1/1 with trample for 2, which is not great, but if you had a 1 drop that attacked that turn, you can play a 3/3 trampler for 2, which is obviously very good. But I like Bloodthirst overall. I think I rated it as a B. We never really got a deck that like nailed it, but when it was easy to grok, pretty easy to implement for the most part. Gruul Guildmage, sacrifice a land to deal 2 target to a player. I love that it's a land damage to a player, not to any target. It doesn't have as much flexibility, but it has a lot of like theme because of that. Then target player gets +2/+2. I rated this as my 4th favorite Guildmage, artwork wise, just because it looks so brooding. He's just like, I hate this city. I want to destroy it. Yeah, I think the look is really cool. Rumbling Slum is my fun card, memory card for the guild. And yeah, 5/5 for 4, beginning of your upkeep, 1 damage to each player. This was never like a powerhouse in our group, but when we started playing more multiplayer sets, like this was definitely a threat that needed to be dealt with. And I just think it's a really cool like concept. The Orzhov contract is it to animate slum districts and banish them into the wastes. The Gruul adopt them and send them back to the city for vengeance. I think that theming of it is also just awesome. Gruul Turf, their land, it's like just like abandoned part of the city with like busted down buildings. Cool. Again, vibes are good. Gruul I put overall as a B. I remember them being pretty fun, especially compared to Orzhov and Izzet in that set. They were a very different feel. So never that powerful, but lots of fun. All right, last 2. Selesnya, green-white. Symbol of the conclave is one of unity with tree supporting sun and sun feeding tree. I never actually read that or noticed that before, but it's true. However, I rated it 6th. 6th of 10. I mean, it passes the Kyle signet test. It just like doesn't do as good of a job as the other ones. Scatter the Seed has Convoke, where each creature you tap when you have a spell with Convoke can reduce the cost by 1, or a mana of the creature's color. This was fantastic. This was a great starter set, like first set to Magic. So this wasn't my deck, this was my roommate's, but it was a perfect way for me to like think about decks that go wide, and then they can use that width to go deep for like big creatures like Siege Worm and stuff. And yeah, I rated it as an A. Probably didn't rate it S because it was never a deck that I played. But yeah, it was fun to play against. It was a great learning experience, and yeah, pretty powerful, like helpful. For the Guild Mage, put a Saproling token into play. Creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. Both are solid, if slightly expensive. And I rated the Guild Mage as a 9. This is my 9th of 10. I just don't really care for his look. I mean, now that I look at it, I don't know. I'm kind of doubting my previous self. Like you kind of remember, it's horny and stressed. He's got the stress down. But yeah, sorry, Selesnya Guild Mage, 9 of 10. Watch Wolf is my fun card. Only in Ravnica do the wolves watch the flock. Just a 3/3 for 2. They're vanilla. And I loved that. Later on, I had a white-green deck based around like buffing your creatures, make them scary. That had other like value vanilla cards that are white-green. I just really liked that idea. I was like, wow, that's a bigger creature you should be able to play at that point. And that's what it brings to the table. It's just the bigness of it. And I think the flavor is fun too. Selesnya Sanctuary, again, does a great job highlighting the vibe of the guild. Great job. 10-way tie. Still standing. Overall, I rated Selesnya as a B. Again, it was a great guild for me to learn against, even if it didn't really last beyond like Guild Pact. It's not like there was a Selesnya deck that people kept playing in my game group, but I remember fondly squaring off against that with my I cannot stress, absolutely jank-tastic Dimir starter deck. Like it was just trying to do too much with too little, and yeah, but good for learning. Last up, Azorius. This was not my guild in Dissension. It was Rakdos. I did, at that point, 3 sets into Magic, have some inklings of like, ooh, it's kind of fun being like the controlling, like white-blue sort of vibe. It's funny, like ironically, that the guild that was mine was Rakdos, which has Hellbent, and was a completely different vibe. But I did always kind of like dig on the Azorius look and feel and mechanics. For their signet, the maze-like design embodies the core of Azorius law: strict structure designed to test wills and stall change. That's a pretty legit flavor text, and cool art. I said it was 4th, so runner-up of all the signets. Plumes of Peace with Forecast. So Forecast, reveal the card from your hand and do a thing. Then the forecast is like you are showing them that something is coming up later. It's almost like, whereas Transmute was burn through your cards quicker for a good effect, this kind of kept your hand big, like maintained your cards as opposed to burning through them for a small effect, with a cost of like showing your opponents that you have a thing. But yeah, it was pretty cool. But I mean, obviously you can forecast, show them the thing, and then also play it on the same creature, and then they just don't untap because you tapped them with the forecast. But so like there are ways of just making it like mechanically work. But I said overall D. We never really got the forecast, like never really saw a ton of play in our group. The Guild Mage, tap a creature and counter target activated ability. That second one is pretty awesome, I have to say. But overall, this is my 8th of 10 Guild Mages. I do not understand the look of this one at all. Just like kind of it's just odd. It does not seem to match with what we just read about the Dimir or Azorius signet. Like does not at all match the way this looks to me. So 8th of 10. Wind Reaver. I had to put this in here because this is like the least Azorius card that we did actually try to make work. I mean, it's this like tough, like hard to kill thing that you can make it gain toughness, and then you can switch the power and toughness until the end of turn. So if it's getting through, once it's actually through, you can switch it so a 1/5 becomes a 5/1 without blockers, and then you can also return it to your hand if it's ever under threat. Like, lots of utility. Like, interesting. I don't know if it's necessarily good, but that's like the most memorable card that we had trying to make Azorius work, and it's like not, I don't know, it's not this not Azorius, it's just kind of not Azorius. But maybe that's because I just didn't play him enough. Maybe it's like the quintessence, maybe the Azorius, the white blue players out there are like, that's exactly the kind of creature we want to play. Probably is, honestly, but I don't know. And Azorius Chancery, this one again is probably on the lower side of the tie, but it does a pretty good job of showing what the guild is. But overall, D. I rated Azorius because we never really had a deck that stood out, that like did its job all that well in our friend group of them. And at that time, we were, again, our collections were growing. We're moving away from like the let's all get a starter deck and try to make it work. But yeah, so that is my rip-roaring tour through these 50 cards up here. And it's just super fun that this is up. It took a long time for me to make it happen. Wasn't all that expensive. I had 30 of the 50 cards in my collection that I've honestly been just selling for money and or keeping for backs for proxies for Project Jumpstart. More on that later. Sorry to use the P word to some of you. But this is, just a totally different what's all this about for something that's not actually a game, but it brings me a ton of joy to just see it, to kind of take a little tour of the familiar faces and locales from a simpler time when I was in undergrad. But it's also really fun, another way for me to connect with my students at school. For those who are currently playing Magic, we're like, oh, cards from 2005, what? And some of the cards in here are like legit really cool. So it's fun to be able to show that, and if they talk about you play Magic, and then I can kind of just dovetail into it. I mean, the walls in my office are filled with conversation starters, and this, I'm thrilled that it's one of them. So if you stuck around this far, first of all, thank you. That's incredible. Sound off down below. What guild is your favorite guild? And what version of Ravnica was that from? Because, again, I don't even know all the names of the different versions of Ravnica at this point. But if I had to choose, even though I said Dimir was, S tier, my first ever, Izzet all day long. Electro deck is just so fun to play. Probably super not fun to play against, if I'm being honest. But that's it for me. So thank you so much for taking pause to give pause. And we'll see you next time.